What if the reason you're tired, inflamed, gaining weight, or struggling with brain fog isn't lack of willpower, but the food system itself? This week on Next Level Healing, I'm joined by Dr. Liz Graves, founder of Back to Real Foods. We dive into metabolic health, seed oils, amino acids, food quality, and the surprising reasons so many people are doing everything right but still don't feel well. Can't wait to see you there. Welcome to this episode of Next Level Healing. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Perry. My guest today is a woman who created the Back to Real Food brand. She is committed to using food to restore health and get back to simple things so that you're empowered to experience optimal health. Welcome, Dr. Liz Graves.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
So take us back in time. I know you went through the yo-yo dieting. What was life? What was life like for you getting through chiropractic college? What were your challenges, and how did you evolve from sort of the standard chiropractic model to what you're doing today?
Oh, absolutely. So I always start off by saying I did not grow up wanting to be a doctor. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I went to college. I got a lit degree. I had no idea what I was going to do with a lit degree. And then I became a chiropractic patient, and then I became a chiropractic employee. And then I saw the power of chiropractic. And when I mean the power of chiropractic, it wasn't so much the adjustment, it was the philosophy that the body heals from the inside out. And I fell in love with that philosophy because that is the way our bodies were designed. They were designed to heal. They're not like a car that breaks down and needs new parts. They are designed that, given the right tools, given the right support, removing the wrong kind of interference, they will heal. And so I fell in love with that philosophy, which what inspired me to become a chiropractor. And so went to chiropractic school, got out of chiropractic school, and I was full-time adjusting for the first almost decade. And I loved it, and it was so much fun. And even then, though, in my practice, you can't just get adjusted and be healthy. You can't, you get adjusted and you go eat junk all day long and you never get off the couch, you're not going to be healthy. Same thing if you only exercise and you eat junk, or, or if you have a really bad mindset, but you're doing everything else right, you're not going to have good health. So in my practice, I taught these other things. I taught nutrition, I taught exercise, not as an expert, but just as part of a healthy lifestyle. And the nutrition was always a passion. And it was always my favorite thing to talk about. And then it just kind of accidentally grew into a full-time business. I started doing weight loss with people. It was really successful. It worked really well. But I did weight loss through a different lens. I did weight loss through that chiropractic lens of, why is somebody struggling with their weight? How are two people eating the exact same thing, but one of them never gains weight and the other one does everything right and can't lose weight? And so I took that chiropractic lens of, what do we do to support the body? What do we do to get the body working right? How do we use food? How do we use feasting and fasting cycles? How do we do this to adapt the body so the body can heal? And so that's really how Back to Real Food was born. I'm really stubborn when I see a problem or an inefficiency. I want to dig in and be like, okay, how do we figure it out? How do we make it better? How do we make it work better? And so it really just evolved, but I love what I do. And I get to do this virtually now. So I work with people all over the US. And that's been amazing because, when you're in a chiropractic office, you're limited by, how many, by, hours in the day, by, location and things like this. And so now I work one-on-one, I do group things, and I'm really helping to serve more people, which I love.
I couldn't agree more. When I went from brick and mortar to working in this virtual space, it was so freeing in so many ways, and just such a privilege to be able to work with people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it like for you to struggle with, because you mentioned the yo-yo dieting, and a lot of people, they're trying to use willpower, they're trying to figure it out. A lot of times they apply things and end up making things worse. Can you speak to that? What it was like to struggle through that? And then what were some of the big wins that you found along the way that allowed you to get the kind of health that you were striving for?
Yeah. So my favorite analogy is from the time I was in college and gained the freshman 15, I spent the next decade and a half of my life gaining and losing the same 10 or 15 pounds. I joke, I've probably lost 100 pounds in a decade, but it was the same 10 to 15 over and over and over again. So when people come to me and they say, I've tried it all, I'm like, you are preaching to the choir. I have been there. I have done yeah, when the zone was popular. And then, I don't know if you remember the master cleanse where you did like the lemonade and the maple syrup and, the cabbage soup diet. And I did the diet over the counter diet pills. And I did, I guess carnivore wasn't popular. I did keto back then. And, I did all these things and they never fixed the problem. So I remember that frustration. And the irony is I have a sister who's, 3 years apart, who grew up, have similar habits, things like that. At 9 months pregnant, she weighed less than I did. And I was in the zone. I was going to the gym two hours a day, twice a day, 6 days a week. I was eating perfect. I didn't eat anything processed. And I remember that frustration. And so the biggest shift for me really was, I kind of got involved in doing a weight loss franchise, which wasn't a good fit for me. But I learned a couple of things in their approach that kind of opened my eyes to approaching weight loss differently.
Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you.
Our bodies are masters of adaptation. We adapt to the stress we put our body under. So like exercise, you go to the gym and you lift weights, you break down muscle fibers and your body grows new muscle fibers. Your body adapts to the stress you put it under. So if you're dieting and dieting and dieting, your body adapts to living on less. And so you actually, as you create that adaptation of living on less, you slow down the metabolism. And then it makes it harder to lose weight, which is why diet after diet after diet, it seems like it's getting harder. So I have more of a cyclic approach to weight loss where we're going to do a window of lower calorie, but we're going to balance it with a window of high calorie to rev up the metabolism. So it's this more cyclic approach where we're pushing the body one way to adapt, and then we're balancing that with pushing the body the other direction to adapt again in a positive direction. So it's kind of, you think about I always think about who really got that kind of fitness thing, right? The bodybuilders, they would bulk, and then they'd lean out before they get on stage. I kind of do the opposite. I lean, and then we bulk as far as building up the muscle. So the important things for me is that people are doing it in a healthy way, that we're not losing muscle, that we're not losing water, that we're isolating, losing subcutaneous, the body fat, we're isolating, losing visceral fat so the hormones work better. And so I that's really what shifted for me is that cyclic way of you adapt this way and maximize benefits there, and then you adapt the other direction to maximize benefits there. And that's how you get these end goals or these end results that people are just, they feel like they just can't reach.
So give us an example or two of people that you've worked with recently that came to you and said they've tried everything. Just walk us through. I mean, obviously not giving any names, but maybe what professions they, what kind of lifestyle they had, what their biggest mistakes were, how they were completely surprised to almost to do the counterintuitive thing that actually gave them the result that they were looking for. Can you walk us through a couple of those?
I would love to. So I would say probably I have a whole group of women that it's kind of a very similar story where they never really struggled with their weight until perimenopause. And then it was just a little bit at a time, but it was all around the belly. And they had never dieted and they didn't know where to start and whatever they did didn't work. And what I like to say is there is that window of time as your hormones are shifting where you're metabolically susceptible to putting on weight and the metabolism slowing down. And if you know how to combat that with food, it doesn't have to be your destiny. But if you don't, you can get stuck there. And so I've seen a lot of those kind of women where they're like, I've tried diets, I've done, I've done intermittent fasting, I've done paleo, or I've done keto, or I've done low carb, or I've done intermittent fasting with low carb. And I lose a little bit of weight, but I'm not losing the inches around the middle. And so what I do differently is we isolate a short window of time, like 3 to 6 weeks, to really target fat loss. And in that window of time, I'll typically have people drop 1 to 2 clothing sizes. I mean, we're talking inches. I'm not talking a huge amount of weight because we're not losing water or muscle, but I'm saying inches. And then being able to go into a high calorie state and rev up that metabolism so they don't have to keep dieting long term. So I feel like I see a lot of women in that, peri postmenopausal where they're like, I don't know this body anymore. And then I have people that they've struggled their whole life. I have a woman I'm working that I worked with a few years ago that young woman, but she was a size 14, 16 by the time she was in middle school. And she'd been on every diet. She was on a diet in middle school. So it was diet, diet, diet. And so when I met with her, her goal was she just wanted to be in regular size clothing store. She's like, I just want to be a 14 again. In middle school, I was a 14. I thought I had a problem. I just want to be back there. And so I started working with her and we did this cyclic thing. And it took about 9 months and she dropped, gosh, I want to say at that point, she probably dropped about 75, 80 pounds. And she came to me and she said, Dr. Liz, I don't know what to do next. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I've been teaching you all along the way. I'm very much about like empowering and equipping people on what to do to be able to maintain and keep weight off. And she's like, well, I don't know what my goal is. She's like, I'm in a like 12 or 14 and 14 was my goal. And I'm here. And she's like, but I kind of think I might want to lose more weight, but I don't know what my goal is because I didn't even think that this was possible. I didn't think I'd even get to a 16. And I said, well, let's just talk about it. So do you want to be a size smaller than you are right now? She's like, yeah, I think I do. And I said, well, let's work towards that. And when we get there, let's meet again and let's talk about it. And where her sweet spot ended up being a size 8, which she never, this is where like you see this all that's playing with the mindset stuff you do, where like people don't imagine the life they could have because of those self-limiting beliefs. And I think of one more woman now. Now I start thinking about everybody. Now I think of another one. I have a woman that type 2 diabetes. She lost 65 pounds, but she reduced her insulin. I'm sorry, not type 2. She's type 1 diabetes. So she will always be on insulin.
Right.
Lost 65 pounds. She reduced her insulin intake by 75%. And for the first time in her adult life, had a normal A1C. I had a woman reverse her rheumatoid arthritis just by using like just real food. This is the thing. Like we don't realize how much processed food and chemicals is causing inflammation and flaring up autoimmune stuff. So I could go on and on about all the stories.
Yeah, and diabetes, well, type 1 is really tough, so congratulations on that. Diabetes, it can be extraordinarily responsive, and so can rheumatoid arthritis. So I love these stories. And with traditional medicine, if people go to a regular doctor, they're unlikely to hear these things. I've had many people in my office walk in and not know anything about these things, and it's a shame because I think most people, if they know that there are ways to naturally help themselves without having to turn to drugs that have a lot of side effects or God forbid surgery, then they would choose these things. So tell us more about metabolism restoration.
So I always like to start off explaining metabolism because it's a big fancy word and we have an idea of it, but I like to simplify it for everybody. So when I say metabolism, that is a word that's describing in general what your body does with food. So food has a certain amount of calories. It's a certain amount of stored energy. And what's supposed to happen is we are supposed to eat that and our body is supposed to convert it into usable energy. And when that's working right, we're quote unquote, we have a fast metabolism. Everything that goes in gets used up and we have energy and focus and we feel good. When the metabolism is running slow, and a lot of people will say I have a slow metabolism, but they don't think about what that means. What that's saying or what that means is you're eating the foods that your body needs for energy, but somewhere along the way, your body is not converting it into usable energy. Your body's storing it and saving it for later. And those are going to give you signs and symptoms of, weight gain, low energy, brain fog, because your body's just not accessing the fuel source. I love analogy. I love a parable. So I always talk about food being fuel. You want to be able to put a full tank of gas in your car and go as far as you need to go. If you only put a quarter of a tank of gas in your car because you're on a diet, you don't go very far. Or if you have a slow metabolism and you put the full tank of gas in your car, but it has a leak in the gas tank, you're not going to get very far either. So again, it's not necessarily about another diet or a different diet. It's looking back and seeing like, what's the balance? So one of the ways I clean up the metabolism is cleaning up the foods. So, I always joke, the name of my company is Back to Real Food. I think coming into working with me that you're not going to be eating McDonald's every day. Just bottom line, you're going to eat real food. Real food, by the way, is the stuff that God put here, grows out of the earth, swims in the sea, walks on the land. So if 300 years ago it was here, that's real food. So, first and foremost is getting the right building blocks in the body. Our body knows what to do with real food. It does not know what to do with a lot of these bioengineers and ultra processed things.
Just while you're there, tell us about some of the ones that are just the most prevalent, the ones that are in everything, the ones that people just, without knowing it, they're consuming huge amounts of this stuff unless they are educated enough to read labels and
I'm curious if you're going to say the same thing as me. I would say the number one right now is the seed oil. So adulterated seed oils. That is number one. So adulterated seed oils are going to be your vegetable, your canola, your sunflower, your safflower, and they're in everything. You go in, I was in Whole Foods earlier today because I had to pick up some things. And I literally, like, when I walk in there, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, okay. Like literally protein, vegetables, and fruit you can get, but everything. It's so rampant. And these adulterated seed oils do a couple of things. They mess up the cell wall so that they cause inflammation at the cellular level. Good stuff can't get into your cell, bad stuff can't get out of your cell. And so it leads to cellular congestion, which is going to disrupt mitochondrial function, which is our ATP and our power source and our energy. So number one, I say, is those seed oils. And so the first part when I first start working with people on my protocol is we cut out the seed oils. People start feeling better real quick. And then when we start adding some things back in, we talk about, okay, we've already eliminated this. So instead of these, let's use these natural healthy fats. Let's use, avocado oil or olive oil or butter or tallow or lard, again, the things that were here 300 years ago that, God put on the earth for us to eat. That's how our bodies have evolved. And that's what it works best with. So I would say seed oils are number one. And then number two, I don't know if it's more the like the sugar, the high fructose corn syrup, or if it's more just the chemicals in general. There's so many chemicals. And one of those that I get annoyed with because you can't find products without it is citric acid. Citric acid, most forms of citric acid is a mold derivative. I don't know if I'm sure you heard of this. Not everybody in your audience probably heard, but
no, actually I didn't. I'm happy to know this. I did not know this.
Like, do you remember a few months ago with when it came out about the microbial enzymes in the cheese and how it's a form of mold? That was all over social media for a minute. Same thing with the citric acid. Most of the forms of citric acid is a microbial kind of mold derivative. So there's things like this where, first of all, we can't live perfect. I eat citric acid. I can't avoid it. It's in some things. So I always, when I'm working with people, talk about let's hit the low-hanging fruit. Like, you're not going to, change the trajectory of a ship 180 degrees in 1 minute. So what's the low-hanging fruit? What's affecting your health the most? Where can we start making these shifts? And then over time, it gets easier and easier.
So what are 3 fabulous foods that people can add to their diet, most people, and will get wonderful benefit from? I mean, I know there's outliers, but I
love that question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. That's such a smart question. I would say number one, what I see is number one would be adding more healthy fats. Because we're still kind of coming off the 80s of where people were scared of fat. We're still coming off of the false information that was presented like in the 1920s to 50s about saturated fats being bad. So I feel like the natural animal fats and the natural fats from like olives or coconut or things like that, people are still shying away. And if you add a little bit more of those healthy fats in, you stay more full, you feel more satiated, you start healing the cell wall, and then you can naturally eat less of the processed stuff. Number two, I don't know if I always think this, but in the moment right now, I'm thinking salt. People are not getting enough natural sea salt. A lot of people are getting a lot of processed sodium, and that provides you no minerals. But a natural sea salt, I like Redmond's, I like Celtic sea salt, I like Baja Gold. There's lots of different whole mineral salts out there, and those give you minerals. And
Huge difference between the white bleached salt that you, know, at,
Yeah.
at your fast food restaurant sitting on the table.
Yeah. So salt. And then I would say, a third thing you could add in, because we're not taking out, the third thing you could add in, I would say, honestly, is just more things without a food label. Like, if you're craving something sweet, go have a piece of fruit. Look to adding in more whole foods. So look down at your plate and try to have less ingredients in the items that you're eating. Eat more whole foods.
How important is it for you to know your farmer, to get organic? And how important is it to have animal products that haven't come from a factory farm full of pesticides, antibiotics?
I feel like that's hours and hours of conversation, but I'll condense it down. Because I know you love talking about food. I love talking about food. We can talk about this forever. It's so good to know your farmer. So important to know your farmer. And Weston A. Price is a great resource. They have local chapters all over the U.S. You can get connected with a local community that has a lot of the connections to where to get the stuff, or education on why it's important, because I can't cover all of that in the time that we have. But it's so important to know your farmer. One of the biggest problems that we're seeing in gut health is we've got a lot of leaky gut, a lot of ulcerative colitis, a lot of celiac, a lot of gluten sensitivities, all of this. They have one common denominator, and that is the pesticide load. It's not the food item, it's the pesticide load that's breaking up, that's loosening the tight junctions in the gut. And so knowing your farmer and being able to get better produce that has less of a pesticide load is better for everybody. It's also cheaper, and it's also supporting small businesses. In America, it's so important. The small business structure compared to the corporation, that's really the backbone of our country. And when we're dealing directly with the farmers, we're supporting that. We're supporting, locally what's going on, versus a lot of the food that we're purchasing at the major chains and grocery stores, it's being shipped into us. We're giving other countries our money when we have farmland here we could be supporting. And then as far as the meat products, we all end up with a toxin load by what we're exposed to. Same thing with our animals. So animals accumulate toxins from what they're being fed in their environment. A lot of commercially grown proteins, whether it's fish or beef or pork, are being fed things they would never eat in nature. Fish are being fed. That farm fish is being fed animal byproducts. Cows are being fed animal byproducts. They are herbivores. They are being fed animal byproducts, and they're accumulating those toxins. Those toxins are stored in the tissue, and then they accumulate in us. And so again, it's this multifaceted thing that's leading to where we have so many people with autoimmune eczema, kids with autoimmune. There's, all of it leads back to the body burden that we're experiencing. And a big part of that is the food. So knowing your local people, it supports your community, but it also gets you a better product.
And beef is also fed corn, which fattens them up, but it's not a diet they can survive on. So all that inflammation is ruining their health, which turns around and doesn't do your health any good.
Absolutely.
You mentioned it's cheaper. How is it cheaper? Because I think most people, when they go to Costco, they feel like, they can buy all this food for not a lot of money. They can't get all that food at the farmer's market. I always say it's a cost savings to not get sick.
I would say a combo. So when you're going into, not to pick on Whole Foods today, but I also shop at Sprouts and Trader Joe's. That's why, everywhere. But when you're going into a grocery store and you're buying organic, they're the middleman. You're paying the middleman. So the more you can connect locally with a local farmer, and that's where I love Weston A. Price, because they can, connect you with local farmers and co-ops. When you're buying directly from the farmer, I'm here in Texas, so we have cattle, we have dairy. Obviously, we don't have a lot of fruit necessarily, but we've got, tomatoes and peppers and leafy greens and things like that. When you cut out the middleman and you can buy directly from the farmer, more of that money goes into the farmer's pocket and stays in your pocket. So that's where the part of the cost savings is. But the other big part is exactly what you mentioned. You can spend a little more upfront, or you can spend a lot more later when you're sick. Either way, you're going to spend the money. It's just where do you want to invest it?
I think another big cost savings is how you feel every day. I mean, if you're going through life with blood sugar spiking and brain fog and not being able to sleep at night because you're not getting the nutrition, that adds up expense wise.
100%. Yeah, quality of life, ability to access
relationships, all that's going to start getting impacted. What about, okay, so you talk about amino acid support. Let's take a dive into that, because we've had Dr. Hyla Cass on. She's written 8 books. She tends to really specialize. I'm just actually dipping my toes into this more. I didn't realize that with targeted amino acids, it can actually change our mood rather quickly in a positive direction if we're suffering from either low serotonin or dopamine or any of the neurotransmitter issues.
I was amazed when I found out about targeted amino acid therapy, because I've been in healthcare, in crunchy healthcare, in natural healthcare for over half my life, for more than 2 decades. And I only found out about targeted amino acid therapy 3 or 4 years ago. And most people have never heard of it. They've heard of taking like 5-HTP if they're anxious or depressed. They've heard of taking tryptophan maybe, but they've never worked with a practitioner that assesses and then does a targeted approach to resolve an imbalance. So when I was first introduced to this, it was from Lori Hammer. I don't know if you've run into her, but she has a great podcast, Take Back Your Brain. And she's the one that taught me how to use amino acids, and she has a practitioner course for that as well.
Actually, I
And
did a podcast with her. We did a Q&A together, a live Q&A.
did you?
Yeah, and I think I was on her podcast, I believe.
Oh, good. I'll have to go back and listen to that one. Yeah, so she's the one that's trained me, and she has a certification course for it. And what amazed me is I always talk about, like, I'm not symptomatic. I've been doing this for so long. Like, I don't have symptoms. It's very rare that I notice a difference when I take something. When we did my amino acid trialing, that's my favorite thing when testing somebody on the amino acids is within 1 to 2 minutes if they're responding to it. Nothing works like that. Chinese medicine, chiropractic, so much of this stuff, nothing works like that. It changed my life in the sense that I did this testing in probably 2021. And my biggest symptom that I didn't know I had was I was overwhelmed. I was burned out, overwhelmed. My GABA pathway was completely jacked up. Well, I thought this was normal. I'm a business owner. I had, a staff of 6 people. I just weathered through keeping a business open and thriving during COVID. I mean, yeah, you're overwhelmed. That's just life. No, my brain did not have the neurotransmitters to put the brakes on my brain and be able to relax. So when I started doing the amino acids and the therapeutic approach, changed my life. And so the reason I started implementing that in with weight loss, actually, Lori was the one who's like, Dr. Liz, you gotta use this. You gotta use this with your weight loss people. And it took me some time to see it. And now I see it so clearly. Because what's the number one thing people say that triggers them to eat the wrong stuff?
Stress, comfort eating.
Comfort, stress, family, whatever it is. Guess what? If you're depleted in neurotransmitters, you don't have the nutrition to make the neurotransmitters in your brain. I can teach you what to eat till the cows come home. But if your brain doesn't have the brain power to weather those emotions and have that emotional resilience, it's hard to stay the course. So it's been phenomenal watching people that I've worked with years prior working with them again and using the amino acids and seeing them have a completely different experience in how easy it is to stay the course with how to eat to fuel their body. Because if you're looking to ice cream for comfort or you're looking to potato chips when you're frustrated, um, and you don't have to, and your body naturally balances those emotions because you have the GABA or the serotonin or the dopamine, then you don't get pulled off course from every little thing that comes up. So it's been phenomenal adding that in.
Fantastic. So what is your view on mindset when it comes to eating healthy and losing weight?
Absolutely. So I always say, I do like coaching on mindset. I am not a therapist. That is not my lane. But there's, that always comes up, reframing how you look at things, reframing how you approach things, and just being able to open people's minds to, okay, what's worked, what doesn't work? Does this seem realistic? So I always say I do like coaching, but my main focus is on giving the body the functional nutrition pieces you need to be resilient. So the functional nutrition component, so that your metabolism is working and your body's taking in what you're eating and converting it to energy, so you don't have brain fog, so you feel good, so you have energy, so you can do things. The amino acids are hitting that component of making sure that your brain is able to balance natural stressors that come up. And then I really love just, helping people, meeting people with where they're at and then helping them make those little changes over time. If I have somebody that has major trauma, major grief, big things that I know are outside of my wheelhouse, I have a team of people I refer out to. And I love co-managing people. It's the same as working with a diabetic. I'm not adjusting their medication, but if they do my program and they're on insulin, they're not going to need to be on insulin very long, but they're going to need their doctor to help co-manage that. So, I look at it as I'm always in it for the person getting the best results, and I'm going to do what I know to do best. And if it's outside of that, I bring people in that I trust to help, pick up those lanes that I'm not the expert in.
Beautiful. What does stress do to keeping weight on?
Ooh, so we know that whole, I feel like everybody hears about cortisol. So you hear cortisol, your body's holding stress. And I'm like, the cortisol's not always bad. We need cortisol to get up and go and do our day. So yeah, when you're stressed, your body is more likely to hold on to weight. You're more likely to stress eat. You think about it. I think about, our bodies are more similar. You know, biologically, physiologically to our ancestors, 400 or 500 years ago. And so, 400 or 500 years ago, the stresses were short. That was, there was an actual, situation versus today, our stressors are the phone's ringing, the emails coming in, the work's got this, nothing turns off, that's light all the time. We have a different environment where we have a lot more stresses that our body can't adapt to. And so I think the biggest piece of the stress is it's not so much, yes, stress, stress. When you're stressed, yeah, your body's going to try to protect itself. It's going to try to keep weight, keep energy held in. And so we have to kind of look at where these stressors coming from. Our brain, I would say, if you tap into what your brain could do, you could overcome anything, like literally anything.
You're singing my favorite song.
I mean, that whole thing, like we use 10, 12% of our brain function. Like we could tap into it and its power. Like I think about people like Wim Hof or Gandhi or, people who have done these incredible things, incredible stresses they put their body under, and it didn't phase them because they were able to harness their brain. So if we're able to tap into that better, support that better, we may not become superhuman, but we can weather things a little bit easier. And I think when we think about stress, sometimes we miss some of the easy stressors. My favorite thing to talk about when I talk about, healing the body is most of the stuff that we, just have in nature, or most of the biohacks out there are just mimicking nature. Red light's really popular, but guess what? if you go out in the sun, you get most of the same benefits. Cryotherapy, go get in cold environments. Circadian rhythms controlled by seeing the sun and seeing the sunset and not being exposed to artificial light. So I always like to say, if we can just get back to nature, back to what really stimulates our body naturally, that reduces a lot of the stress that we can control. We can't always control the workload or the email or the kids or the different things like that we might be stressed about, but there are ways to support the body that can reduce that stress and make it easier to just feel good.
I'm wondering if you ever went to the trainings of Dr. Jonathan Wright. He was always big on copying nature as well. And I just think there's so much wisdom in that.
I haven't. I'm going to look him up.
Yeah, I'm sure he's long since retired, but I used to go to his conferences along with Dr. Alan Gaby, who wrote the huge book, Nutritional Medicine, with over 55,000 medical citations on different nutrients and how they were studied and the effects in the body. So, yeah, I just figured that was right up your alley. But I just
that does sound right up my alley. Yeah, I'm like everything that we grew up hundreds of years ago that was here, it's meant to heal our body, and all the biohacks, they're just mimicking nature in the modern world.
Because in our modern world, we get into habits. And so you're right, we're consuming the same limited amount of foods and the same ways and the same quantities. Whereas in nature, there was a lot of feast or famine. So it would totally make sense that would regulate us in a way that's much more according to nature.
Yep, that cyclic approach I do for weight loss and metabolism, that is nature, feasting and famine, and also seasonal eating. I mean, I always joke, we aren't supposed to, in Texas, we aren't supposed to eat strawberries in December, So, there's convenience that we've created, and we haven't looked at the broad scope of how that's impacting our health and how it's changing our health. And I'm not saying you're not to eat strawberries in December. I'm just saying that a lot of the problems that we're seeing in the modern world that are man-made, they really are man-made. And there are ways that we can mimic what things were without having to give up all the things that we enjoy.
Comments on soil depletion.
Mm-hmm. My regenerative farms. I love my regenerative farms. Oh, we could talk about food forever.
Well, we walk into the market now. It's not like it was decades ago. Food actually had flavor then, and so much the food doesn't have flavor anymore. And you notice the difference. It's almost like eating junk food if you're eating something that was grown on seriously depleted soil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. So I think everybody's probably heard that, an apple today is not as nutritious as an apple, 200 or 300 years ago. And that's true. We've depleted a lot of the soil, a lot of our farming practices.
Or even 50 years.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There was a spike back in I think it was the 60s, where they came along with this fertilizer that just, it was great for production.
Kill all the natural stuff, all the natural organisms. Yeah. So you think back to biblically, you would have 7 years of crops, and then you would have a year of rest to let the soil recover. We're overdoing the soil. We're depleting the soil. All those little microorganisms that help to put minerals and nutrition into the food is not there. And then on top of that, we threw all that pesticide on that destroyed, a lot of the natural stuff. And then, so we've got these pesticides that we're eating and depleted soil that would have, those natural organisms would have offered a layer of protection. So yeah, that's a big one. And that's also where so many supplement companies are coming in to try to pick up the gaps of, the fulvic and the humic acid. Those are things that are naturally occurring in good, healthy soil. So now what we're having to do, because we don't have good, healthy soil, is we're having to take these supplements. So if we can, again, going back to supporting more local farmers, support your regenerative farming practices, help farmers that are, stuck in the commercial farming, help them adapt into a more regenerative, more natural farming practice. Polyface Farm does a lot of education on that. I love what they're doing. There is a product that can break down the forever chemicals, the pesticides in the soil. I don't know enough about that. Pick Lori's brain on that one.
Okay.
She knows a lot. She was the one that was telling me. I didn't even know that existed. The soil, all of this. So again, we're creating, things in the modern world to make up for what we've destroyed, but we don't want to keep that trajectory going. We want to be able to look back and say, okay, we've destroyed the soil. How do we, build that back up? Because we can't keep going the direction we're going.
And there are doctors like Dr. Zach Bush and Dr. Pierre Corey who are both excellent at their craft and realize how incredibly important it is to fill that gap. And hopefully they'll be able to get to do it at scale, or at least reach others who are capable of getting it to scale, so that we can all enjoy better health. So what are your 3 favorite no-brainer supplements that you're just like, everybody should be taking this because it just helps improve health in general?
One of my favorites, and it hit its tipping point, thanks Gary Brecka, and that created a supply chain issue, but molecular hydrogen. I love molecular hydrogen. I've been using it for more than a decade. Yep. Love molecular hydrogen. Been using it for over a decade, unless you have SIBO. If you have SIBO, you don't want to use it. But otherwise, it regulates oxidative stress. Everybody's going to benefit from regulating oxidative stress, because what that's doing, I know you know this. I'm going to explain this in case anybody listening doesn't know what oxidative stress is. Is that basically your body as you move through the day, as you do things, your body creates free radicals. Free radicals break down and create aging in the body. So anything that can support and regulate oxidative stress and be able to capture those free radicals and turn them into harmless small molecules is good. Molecular hydrogen is a great avenue from that, because that's exactly what it does. I really love the tablets because they're shelf stable and I get a concentrated dose. And I can carry them anywhere in the world. I love using them when I'm flying because you're exposed to radiation. So I like to fast when I fly and take those because it naturally protects my body. But there's water bottles that do it. There's filters that do it. There's a gentleman, Michael, I can't remember his last name, but he has a device that delivers molecular hydrogen to the eyes and to the ears. There's a lot of studies in Japan on the benefits of molecular hydrogen. So I would say that's just kind of my no-brainer because it's good for almost everybody. Were we talking supplements or just anything?
No, let's start with supplements, but I want to give you free reign to share the goodies because you're into some really interesting, cool stuff.
Okay, so molecular hydrogen is one that I always have. And I'm going to go back to salt because that's one of those, I didn't even think about this. I have a whole house filter. I have a reverse osmosis filter on my drinking water. And I didn't think about the fact that all the water I'm exposed to has no natural minerals in it because I'm taking out the chemicals, but with it, I'm stripping the minerals. So really, if you're doing if you're doing the smart thing by filtering out the city water that has prescriptions and toxins and chlorine and fluorine and all that kind of stuff, you want to make sure you're using salt to get those minerals replenished.
Actually, I have an interesting story about that. I went to the Optimum Health Institute for 2 weeks and felt amazing. I mean, my skin, I looked like I was 10 years younger, had more energy than I knew what to do with. But one byproduct that I had was muscle cramping. And I met a water genius, and the water genius said, oh, just put a little Himalayan salt in there. And boy, did that take care of the problem. So that's really, you need, apparently salt test to can make the water more bioavailable. Of course, within reason, we don't want to overdo it and don't want to overdo it either. But there's a reason why salt was actually like currency in certain environments because it was so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so good quality salt. Gosh, what else do I use every day? I really like red light. That's a device I like.
What about spirulina and chlorella? Are you a fan of those things?
I'm not against those. I don't use those very much. I think I love them as an antioxidant. I know a lot of people try to use them more as a binder, and I worry about as a binder, sometimes the toxins bind to them, but then it gets reabsorbed with the bile. But I really like them more as an antioxidant.
Any thoughts on nattokinase?
I don't know enough about nattokinase. I do not. That's one of those that I'm really curious about, is understanding that mechanism more. I don't know enough about that other than a couple of people I really trust. They have a couple of brands they really like. And this is why, like, if I don't know the answer, I'm not going to steer people the wrong way. I'm going to say, I don't know, but I'm going to get you in touch with somebody that does know.
That's a very responsible answer. I appreciate that.
But I'm also somebody that loves to learn, so I'm like, ooh, I want to learn that.
So, what is your favorite way to work with people? Is it one-on-one? Is it a group situation? Are you coming out with any books?
Mm. So I will say, I love working in groups. I think that is everybody learns more when they hear other people's questions. And with so much of what I do, I'm not putting people on the spot and sharing any personal medical stuff. And I'm very discreet in conversations if I'm in a group setting. But I love that group dynamic because you don't feel like you're alone. You see what's working for other people. You see what you could implement. You kind of get encouraged. You get to also, have a level of leadership of being part of it and encouraging others. So I love doing things in a group. Most of the time when I put people through my protocol, I'm working with them in a hybrid. So I do a few appointments one-on-one, and then on a weekly basis, I do a group. And so the one-on-one is where we really can talk, the personal stuff or the specific just to them. But then the group just opens up these conversations that I wouldn't be able to have with each person one-on-one, and that I wouldn't even know would be relevant for one person versus another. So I love that. I tend to do better. I mean, I have more energy and more interaction in the group. So I love that aspect, but it's also nice to connect one-on-one. So I do a lot of hybrid. I did a group fasting and feasting course this year. And these are people I've worked with in the past for weight loss that did it. And I got the best feedback I've ever gotten. They were amazed how much they learned. They were amazed at how confident they were in being able to fast, but then also balance that with feasting and how to properly refuel. So I thought it was a really magical, like 6 weeks. It was a 6-week course where we were physically adapting, talking about what to do. I brought in a lot of spirituality and the biblical fast in with the science and the physiology of fasting. And that was all by group, and it was really wonderful.
Is there sort of a target amount of weight that people are likely to lose? I think in that 3 to 6 week period that you're working with people, what's a common amount of weight that people lose? Number one. Number two, what are their comments about how difficult it is? Do they tend to say, oh my goodness, this is much easier than I thought? What's the kind of feedback that you get?
Wonderful question. So, I do that cyclic thing. So I'll do the weight loss either 3 weeks or 6 weeks, and then we'll still do that feasting cycle, which will be 3 weeks as well. So most of my protocol for weight loss is going to be either a 6 or a 9-week plan. In the 6-week plan, most people are going to lose 10 pounds in about one clothing size, and then in the 9-week plan, most people are going to lose 15 to 30 pounds depending on their body size, and they're going to drop 2 clothing sizes. So it's real, it's a mathematical equation you need. Like in that little short mini plan, I expect about, I don't know, like 2 or 3% body fat. In that longer plan, the 9 weeks, I expect somewhere between 3 and 6% body fat. I like to say I can do in 6 to 9 weeks what focused diet and exercise could do in 6 to 9 months. And so this is kind of goes into your second question, like, what do people say? Is it hard or easy? I will say most people agree with the way I describe it when they really think about it. It was the easiest thing I ever did because of the results I got. Now, it's hard. I'll say it's hard. Like when you're doing it, you're changing a lot of habits all at once. We're going to boot camp the metabolism. You're going to get 6 to 9 months of progress in 6 to 9 weeks. I will say it's very structured. People will say it's really hard, but when we get to the end and they look back, they realize that it was the easiest thing they did because of the amount of results they got in the time they got it. Does that make sense?
Well, because so many of these people are just frustrated as can be. They're probably at a place where they just think they're never going to succeed.
Yeah, because I've had people where they were doing everything right for a month and they lost 3 pounds versus they started working with me and in the first week they lost 3 to 5 pounds. Now, obviously, what the FTC and things like that, what I can guarantee and all those things, I don't guarantee outlandish amounts. What's safe to lose in a week tends to be about 2 to 3 pounds. Do I have people lose more than that? Absolutely. Am I monitoring to make sure they're losing the right kind of weight? Yeah. I'm holding on to water. I'm holding on to muscle, We're losing fat. You can see it in the inches. So I'll say that people will say it's the hardest thing they ever did, but compared to other diets, but when they look back, it was the easiest thing they did to get results and be able to sustain those results. Because, if you go on think about it this way. If you go on Weight Watchers, that's a good one to pick on. Everybody knows about Weight Watchers. Everybody knows about the points. So is Weight Watchers easy? It's pretty easy. They give you a point system. If you want to eat all your points in cake, you can do it. And then you can fill up on the freebies. But you don't lose much weight. So what I teach is you're going to eat real food. You're going to eat protein, fruit, and vegetables. You're not going to eat other junk. So if you're used to eating the standard American diet and you're used to eating a lot of other junk, that's going to be hard to be ready to give up. But a month of counting points, you don't lose any weight versus a month of what I do with real food. You're losing inches, you have less brain fog, you feel better, you put more work in, but you're getting more from the work you're putting in. And I like to say that the whole way through, the carrot is right in front of you. It's not like you never see the results. It's literally like day by day, week by week, that carrot is in front of you and you're seeing progress. And that keeps you going.
And I'm assuming that by going through this process and seeing the results, one is establishing a new lifestyle. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So they have the tools to go on and do this in a sustained way. So when people do your process and they go into life on their own, they now have the tools to do this on their own. Are they able to do that?
Absolutely. So that's where that second part, where that feasting cycle is so important. Because if we just do weight loss and we just focus on losing weight and we don't raise up that metabolic rate, then you're just doing another low calorie diet. So the second part of what I do with people is that feasting window, is raising up the metabolic rate, is in making sure that their body can metabolize more food than what their body needs. We all have what's called our basal metabolic rate or our resting metabolic rate, which is the minimum amount of calories your body needs in a day to maintain homeostasis, to maintain where we are. So during that feast cycle or that high calorie or that adaptation for the better metabolism, what I do is I look at what is their basal metabolic rate and I have them eat more than that. And what we do is during that window of time, we're training the body to learn to metabolize more than what they need. So that when they're done getting their body stabilized, we know what their resting metabolic rate is because I was looking at that to determine how that max calories would be. But then they can eat all the way up to that high calorie state that we train their body for. So it's rather than where most diets you eat low calorie and then you have to keep eating low calorie to keep the weight off, because I lock their body in at this new lower weight with a high calorie approach, raising up that basal metabolic rate, now they can eat more without regaining weight. And so it's not that you have to eat more every day for the rest of your life. I talk about that as we're like, vacation, a weekend away. You're not going to eat your max calories every day, but you don't want to have to live a low calorie lifestyle for the rest of your life. So I am taking people along step by step. Step one is just getting all the metabolic organs playing right together. And then step two is getting the body stabilized. So the hypothalamus associates that new lower weight as your normal weight, even if you have an excess of calories going in. And then at the end of that, we talk about, okay, this is how we add back in, the bread or the pasta or, the ice cream or whatever it is that's part of a lifestyle. I always joke, if you tell me I'm never allowed to eat ice cream again, the only thing I will think about is ice cream. I don't do that to people. What I say is you need enough of a foundational healthy food to keep your body healthy. And when you have a healthy metabolism, you can indulge in moderation. It's not going to hurt you.
Well, and how you indulge also really matters because if you can get an ice cream that's loaded with, it looks like a chemical factory,
Yes.
and you get ice cream that, looks like it was made 100 years ago, which just has cream and, from healthy cows and the things.
Less ingredients. It's I always joke, bread and ice cream, like they should have 5 ingredients. That's it.
And ingredients that we understand.
Yes. I just listened to a great podcast on the gums, which I had not really been aware of because the xanthan and the gur gum and those are everywhere and everything now too, kind of like citric acid. And they give that mouth. Tell me if have you heard this where they give that mouth feel, which is why they use them. That kind of like creamy, kind of not like almost slimy, where it's just a soft texture. Those gums are like slimy, sticky stuff in our intestines, which I haven't really thought about. And visualizing that, it's made me really rethink the gums, especially I don't have a lot of gut issues personally, but so many people today do. So many people are battling, constipation or different, gut dysbiosis or different things. And, so yeah, so a lot of the ice creams or a lot of the, different breads or different things, when you're reading all those labels, they've got those gums in there that, again, it's just wrecking how the body's working.
I've definitely found my gut feels better when all that stuff, you get something in a package and it seemingly has great ingredients in it, but then they sneak in a seed oil or something. And then you find out that when you eat it, you just feel gross, you feel puffy, you feel tired. So, so after they've been through the process, they can take the training wheels off and do this on their own. Does it get easier?
It does. I'm so glad you said take the training wheels off. That's how I always describe to people is that we're going to do this protocol and then we're going to have 2 months of taking the training wheels off where I'm still here in what capacity you need me, but I'm kind of pushing you out of the nest to kind of, see what works. What is balance for you? I like to say that, balance for me is I like to eat really good during the week because I'm at home, I'm busy, I can meal prep. And then when I go out on the weekends, I can indulge a little bit more. If I'm having people over, I can make special things that I would indulge in more. But you have, a mom with small kids, she might need that little bit of chocolate or that little bit of something fun every single night. And she doesn't want to indulge as much on the weekends. So, I do work with people at the end of that weight loss protocol for a minimum of 2 months. That's included with what I do to help start taking those training wheels off. And then we kind of assess where they're at. If they feel really confident, then if they need help from me, they just, book an appointment. Or I have an online portal that they can still, keep a membership to or a subscription to, where they can still, ask me questions and get resources and recipes and things like that. So my goal is to help to get to the root of the problem and then give the support that the individual needs. So it's because some people, they just need to get over the hurdle of what to do to get it working right. And they have good health habits. While other people, it's been a lifelong journey and they need a little bit more handholding. So I had both options set up for people.
What are your favorite blood markers that you look for? Do you do blood work on each of the people that you work with? And are there other metabolic tests that you typically rely on? I don't know, urine tests or any other type of, do you have them all get Oura rings?
Love it. So with what I do for weight loss, I've been doing this a decade. The only thing I really use for testing is a body composition.
That's it.
That's
Really?
it. That's it. That's the only thing I've needed. It doesn't matter if they have a low thyroid, no hormones, whatever's going on, the protocol works. So the only thing that I really need is I want to know where they're starting with muscle, fat, water, and bone. And then I want to be able to see how that's changing over time. I know how it's going to change over time, but I also like that as an educational component for people. Because sometimes people are chasing the wrong number. Sometimes they're chasing a height to weight chart. They're chasing that old BMI. I'll tell you, I had a woman, 5'1", when I popped her on my body composition scale, she had 105 pounds of muscle. She weighed 300 pounds. She had 105 pounds of muscle because when you're overweight for a long time, carrying around extra weight, you build up a lot of muscle. Her height to weight chart says she should weigh 100 pounds because she's 5'1". That's her BMI. So that's why I like body composition, because if you have more muscle, it's okay if you're outside of your BMI, as long as the extra weight's coming from healthy tissue, like muscle or water. And that allows me to look at where's the fat, because it doesn't matter what the number on the scale says. There's a healthy percentage of your total body weight that should be from fat. And so that's where I use the body composition. I use it as a teaching tool. I use it to help people reach their goals. Because sometimes, again, they're looking at a height to weight chart. And, if you have two women the same height and one has 80 pounds of muscle and the other has 100 pounds of muscle, well, the one with less muscle could have a lot more fat and be less healthy, and they could weigh the same. So I use that a lot.
And what body BMI instrument do you use? Because there's a lot of them out there. Are they all?
There's a million of them. So my top two that I think are the best kind of like medical grade ones are going to be Tanita and the InBody. I love both of those, and they give very similar biomarkers when you do them side by side. So I love the Tanita. I love the InBody. Now, what I have most of my patients use, because it's a lot more cost effective, it's Bluetooth enabled, they can do it at home, it costs like 25 or 30 bucks, is the Renpho. RENPHO. And literally, like, it looks like a regular bathroom scale. You turn the app on your phone, you step on the scale, it measures everything. That one's more user-friendly. It's not my favorite algorithm, but what I always say is, you're not trying to get like, what is my exact body fat? You want to know where your body fat is and that it's going down if you're trying to lose weight. So that's where I really like that as for a consumer product. There's also DEXA scan, but DEXA scan is x-ray. And that's going to measure, same things, muscle, water, fat, and bone. It will measure a lot different than the ones I just described that are the scales, because the scales are using bioelectrical impedance. So they're sending a little electrical signal through the body that passes through different tissues at different rate, versus the DEXA is doing an actual x-ray scan of the body. So I have tried them all. I've used them all. I like them all. But that's what I really use for weight loss. Now I've also do, some functional health, I do the targeted amino acids. There's other things that I do, and I do like other tests for that. But for the weight loss and the protocols I use, honestly, it's not a lot of expensive testing. It really is just, we got to get to the root of the problem, get the body working right, and your body wants to heal.
How much of this did you develop yourself, and how much did you learn from others?
Oh, gosh. Well, I've been doing this for like 25 years, in one way or another. So there's parts to it, like the part where I do the feasting cycle. That was all me. That was me trying to hack. How do I make this easier to keep the weight off? Because that's what everybody struggles with. That's what I struggled with. So that was really more just me and my inability to just let it go. I wanted to find a solution. So that was that. And then as far as the other, it's been bits and pieces over time. So just learning from people about, regenerative farming and healthy food and healthy fats and different things like that. And then as far as the weight loss part that I use, some parts to that actually came from Dr. Simmons when he was doing like the HCG diet. I don't give anybody hormones. I don't do HCG, but he was on to something, being able to put the body into a fasting mimicking diet. So lots of people have done fasting mimicking diets over the years. Dr. Simmons did the HCG. Lots of different diets use that same kind of protocol. Walter Longo, he does the Prolon fast. Those are a fasting mimicking diet, where basically any fasting mimicking diet, you're eating food, but you're also, the way you're eating, you're putting the body into a more fasted state, which helps to drive down glucose, which helps to burn fat, which gets you into ketosis without cutting out all the carbs. So a lot of what I do in that kind of fasting mimicking time, where we're targeting fat loss and getting the metabolic organs online together again, is different things of how people have done fasting mimicking in the past that worked, but making it more holistic and supportive to the body. Like, I love the Prolonged fast. I think it's brilliant. It's easy for people to use in some of the products. I wouldn't and it's really expensive for what it is. You can do it with food if you know how to do the food. So I would say it's a big combo. I've learned a lot, but I can't stop putting my own tweaks on things. It's kind of like when I make a recipe, people always are like, can I have a recipe for this? I'm like, well, it's never the same. I'm always making it better.
So how can people find you? How do they stay in touch with you? Are there layers of working with you, or do you have like just those two programs you told us about?
Yes. So my website is back2 Real Food. And if you just Google Back to Real Food and Dr. Liz, I'll pop up. I should pop up. I am intermittently on social media. I am working to be better and more consistent, but I am on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, and same handles, Back to Real Food. I have a YouTube channel, same thing, Back to Real Food. So I'm in all those places. I would say my website's probably the easiest place. There is a contact form if you just want to message me. I have a intro call if you don't know what type of appointment you need. So you can always just book that intro call from my website. Or I do have my different appointment types, my 3 main appointment types, either weight loss, functional health, or targeted amino acid therapy. Most people, kind of my flagship program is weight loss. That really is my specialty, weight loss, metabolic health. And then once I work with people, that's when they realize like, oh, I know some stuff. And that's how I branched out into the functional health or the amino acids. But, I have incorporated the amino acids in partly with weight loss now. Not everybody needs them, but I like to rule it in or rule it out if a person's going to need that support. So I would say my website's the best place for most people to go.
And your website is?
Back the number 2, realfood.com.
Beautiful. And that's how they find you on the other social media too. Awesome. Well, Liz, I know we could talk for a week straight. We have so much in common and so much that we appreciate in terms of health and healing. Thank you so much for being here on Next Level Healing. And folks, for those people that would benefit from hearing this, please share it. And of course, please like and subscribe so more people can find us. And we will see you on the next episode of Next Level Healing. This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.